Welcome to Localite, everyone. Thank you for joining us. You know, we're going to get right into it. Today we have Carolyn Purcell. She's the Executive Director of the Columbia Gorge Discovery Center in studio. And Carolyn, thank you for coming on. It's great to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So let's talk about the center itself as far as, you know, it's like a museum, it's like an education center, it's, you know, called the Discovery Center. What exactly would you describe it as?
Well, all the things that we do are related to our mission. And our mission is to inspire appreciation and stewardship of the Columbia Gorge and Wasco County. So we do that in many ways. We have a museum with artifacts. We also have an interpretive center that teaches people about all the things that they can find in the gorge. We're really a gateway to the east end of the gorge for people traveling through. They stop there to learn about the cultural and natural history of the gorge and to learn about the wineries they can visit and places to stay. And so in a lot of ways, we sort of function as part of the Chamber of Commerce to teach people about what's in the gorge. And we have a lot of educational activities that go on out there. We engage school children.
Great. Well, and some of your exhibits, I mean, they're really interesting. I mean, you've got almost like an exhibit where it's almost like you go back in time, and you know, you got the river boats and, you know, different pieces of fishing equipment and all these kinds of things. Walk us through that a bit.
Okay. It's really, the Dalles is really a pivotal place for interpreting history because so many significant things happened here. And so it's, when you walk through the exhibit, you're walking through time and you're hitting all those significant things that are tied to national history and regional history. Starting with 10,000 years ago, this area was a trade center for all the tribes, not only in the Pacific Northwest, but even beyond that. So Celilo Falls and all of the Indian tribes, it begins with that. And then it moves into the missionaries and the Oregon Trail. This is a very significant point for people traveling the Oregon Trail because when they got here, they had, in many ways, this is the end of the Oregon Trail because when they got here, they had to decide to go overland or to build a raft and brave the river. And both of those had their perils. So trying to get to the Willamette Valley from here was a real challenge. And then you have the frontier military history with Fort Dalles. This was a very significant point for the Cayuse Indian Wars, and it was a big post at one time here in the Dalles. Also during the gold mining, the gold rush, this was a supply point for getting supplies into the mining camps, because riverboats could only get up this far because of Celilo Falls.
Oh, right.
So the Dalles became a very significant trading and shipping post, and it was a rowdy place, and there was people had gold in their pockets to pay for things, and there were a lot of saloons, and it was just a very rowdy place.
Yeah, a lot of brothels too, I understand.
Yes, there were. And so so then we have, let's see, railroad wars. There was very significant on the Deschutes, the Deschutes River. It was the last great railroad war of the big railroad tycoons in the country trying to get into Central Oregon. And they were literally building down each side of the river, racing each other to get there. And so that's a fascinating story. The Chinese were here. They came in to help build the railroad, and then they stayed and worked in the fisheries and the canneries. So there was a really rich Chinese history here too. So there's just so many things to interpret that happened right here that touch major themes in national history. And Lewis and Clark, I left out Lewis and Clark. They came right through here too.
Exactly.
So, yeah. So,
and that's all actually part of the Wasco County Historical Museum, right?
Right, exactly.
So you actually, in your facility, house all of those exhibits are part of the Wasco County Historical Museum.
Right, exactly. And then the other part of our museum is natural history of the Columbia River Gorge. So that those exhibits are about geology and the Ice Age and all of the native plants that are here and that sort of thing.
The Ice Age, I mean, you guys have this one, I think it's like a Columbia mammoth. It's like 13 feet tall.
Yeah.
And it's a permanent display.
Right.
It's there. And why the Ice Age? What's the connection with the gorge and the Ice Age? And
Well, the Missoula floods, which happened during the Ice Age, basically there were ice dams inland, like in Montana. Big ice dams, and there were inland lakes. And during different periods of time, those ice dams would give way, and this whole region would be completely flooded. And this happened, there were over 100 floods that happened, and probably the last ones were about 10,000 years ago.
Okay.
And we sort of picked that, that time frame because what's interesting about 10,000 years ago is it was the last of the Ice Age floods, but also there were still Columbian mammoths living here, and there were people here, because that's when people were coming here to trade.
Okay.
So it's a really significant time, and it really piques the imagination to think about these catastrophic floods and mammoths walking around and people being here.
Right.
So it's just very interesting. But also what those floods did is they brought the soil here that makes this a great growing region.
Oh, really?
Right.
Okay.
So the fruit and all the wineries that are springing up in the gorge, it all goes back to the Ice Age floods and why the soil is so good here.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, we'll continue the conversation after the break. I want to ask you a little bit about your education center and some of the collections that you guys have there at the Columbia Gorge Discovery Center. So we'll be right back with Carolyn Purcell here on Localite. Don't go anywhere.